Ethan Hale never imagined his life would change during what was supposed to be a normal maintenance shift. He was a simple engineer, someone who preferred fixing engines over meeting important guests. But fate has a strange way of finding people who least expect it. On that day, the Interstellar Research Station buzzed with activity because Queen Aravel of Leora, ruler of a peaceful alien empire, was visiting for diplomatic talks. Everyone on the station had been preparing for weeks, polishing every hallway and testing every system twice. Ethan was not part of the welcome team. He was only supposed to check a set of oxygen pumps on the lower deck. When the alarm suddenly blared, Ethan first thought it was another drill. But then the lights flickered red, and a deep warning voice announced an attack on the station. Ethan felt the floor shake under his boots. Something serious was happening. He grabbed his toolkit and ran toward the nearest secure zone, but as he turned a corner, he saw a group of panicked guards rushing in the opposite direction. In the middle of them was someone he recognized from the news screens, Queen Aravel herself, even in danger. She stood with calm dignity, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the emergency lights. Her tall frame and intricate ceremonial clothing made her look like someone from a dream, not a real person fleeing for her life. But the guards around her were in trouble. A second explosion echoed through the corridor, and half of the team was knocked off their feet. Smoke filled the air, and the Queen stumbled, her crown falling and sliding across the floor. Ethan didn't think, he just reacted. He rushed forward, grabbed her arm, and pulled her away from the collapsing wall right before it caved in. Rubble crashed behind them, blocking the hallway completely. The guards who remained on the other side shouted her name, but their voices faded behind the debris. Aravel looked at Ethan with surprised eyes, as if she could not believe someone had dared to touch her. But there was no time to think about that. "This way," Ethan said, guiding her down a maintenance corridor only engineers used. The Queen followed him without question.
Oh.
Even though the path looked narrow and dim, the station was shaking again, as if more explosions were tearing through different floors. Ethan knew the attackers wanted one thing: the Queen. If they caught her, the entire galaxy might be thrown into chaos. He might not have been a soldier, but he was the only person near her right now. He would not let her fall into danger. They reached a small control room where Ethan manually locked the doors. The Queen studied him quietly. She didn't look frightened, only tired, as if she had carried too many responsibilities for too long. "You saved me," she said softly. "I only did what anyone would," Ethan replied, though he knew not everyone would have risked running toward explosions instead of away from them. The lights flickered again, and Ethan checked the system panel. Most security lines were down. Evacuation routes were blocked. They were stranded for now. He told her they needed to wait here until the rescue team could reach them. The Queen nodded, sitting carefully on a metal bench, her royal attire torn and dusty. For the first time, Ethan was close enough to see her clearly. Her eyes were a deep violet, filled with a shimmering glow unique to her species. Her voice carried a calm strength that made even a chaotic moment feel grounded. Ethan tried to focus on fixing the emergency beacon, but she spoke again. "What is your name?" "Ethan Hale, Engineer 3rd Class," he said, feeling suddenly very small compared to the Queen of an entire empire. She smiled slightly. "Ethan, thank you." Silence settled between them for a while, broken only by the distant echoes of fighting outside the walls. Ethan kept working, but he could feel her gaze on him now and then, not in a judging way, but curious. "You are not afraid," she observed. Ethan chuckled softly. "I'm very afraid. I just don't have time to think about it." That made her smile again, a real smile this time, not the formal one she used during official events. It softened her features. It's making her seem more like a person and less like the legendary leader he had only heard about. Hours passed slowly as they waited. The room grew cold because the heating system was damaged. Ethan tore part of the thermal covering from a piece of equipment and offered it to her. She accepted it, wrapping it around her shoulders. He sat across from her, hugging his arms to keep warm. With nothing to do but wait, they began to talk. At first, the conversation stayed safe. Her visit, his work, the station. But slowly, their words went deeper. Aravel shared stories about her homeworld, about glowing gardens that bloomed under 3 suns, and about the weight of ruling billions of lives. Ethan listened carefully, finding himself drawn to her honesty. She told him she often felt lonely even while surrounded by people. Everyone expected perfection from her. When she asked about his life, he felt shy. He spoke about his family on Earth, his dream of exploring new worlds, and how he joined engineering because he wanted a peaceful life. He admitted he never imagined meeting a queen, let alone talking to one so closely. "You treat me like a person," she said quietly. "You are a person," he answered simply. The way she looked at him in that moment made his heartbeat quicken. There was warmth in her eyes now, something gentle and unexpected. Maybe it was the danger around them, or the long hours sitting together in the cold. Maybe it was the honesty they shared. But something shifted between them. They were strangers from different worlds. Yet in that cramped room, they felt connected. The emergency lights dimmed further, and the temperature dropped again. Ethan moved closer to share body warmth, asking permission first out of respect. She nodded, and they sat side by side, their shoulders touching. It was a simple gesture, but it felt meaningful. As the night stretched on, exhaustion pulled at them both. Aravel leaned her head lightly against his shoulder, trusting him completely. Ethan felt a gentle rush of emotion, protectiveness, admiration. Something deeper he didn't yet understand. When the rescue signal finally came hours later, they quickly prepared to leave. Forces loyal to her had regained control of most parts of the station. Ethan led her through another hidden path until the guards found them. Before stepping out, she turned to him. In her eyes was something unspoken, something strong. "You saved my life, Ethan. I will not forget this." He nodded, but inside he was afraid, because he knew her world was full of power, duty, and expectations. A world that had no place for a simple engineer like him. Yet in that moment, with the room silent and time slowing around them, the connection they shared felt real, strangely real. Neither of them understood how much that night would shape their lives. Neither knew that this brief moment would echo across years and galaxies. But for now, all they had was the memory of that night, and the quiet truth that something had begun between them, something neither could explain, yet neither could ignore. Tilde, tilde, tilde. 5 years had passed, yet Queen Aravel often found her thoughts drifting back to that single night on the damaged station. The night when a quiet human engineer named Ethan Hale risked everything to protect her. She had lived through countless meetings, royal gatherings, and high-level decisions since then. But none of those events erased the memory of the man who disappeared without saying a word, after the rescue team escorted her from the ruined corridor. She tried to look for him. Her guards told her he had been injured, taken to the medical wing, and then transferred to another deck for safety. She wanted to see him, even if only for a moment, but her diplomats insisted they had no time. They rushed her to her ship, insisting the political situation was too unstable. She had no choice but to obey. But later, when she sent an official request to find Ethan, the station reported that he had resigned and left within days. No forwarding address. No contact. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished from the universe. Aravel often wondered why. Did he not want to see her again? Did he think their quiet, shared moment during danger meant nothing? Or was he trying to protect her from scandal or political trouble? She didn't know. And that uncertainty stayed with her for years like a small weight pressing gently against her chest. During those 5 years, Aravel's life became even more complicated. The Leoran Empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, and as queen, she carried the responsibility of guiding her people through peace and conflict. Every decision she made affected millions of lives. Her days were filled with council meetings, treaty signings, diplomatic negotiations, and ceremonies. People admired her grace, her confidence, and her calm leadership. But behind that royal image, she was often tired of being perfect. Tired of never having a moment that truly belonged to her. Whenever she felt overwhelmed, she found herself touching the small silver token Ethan had given her accidentally. It wasn't a gift, just a simple Earth-made key tag he dropped when he rushed to help her. She picked it up after he left the control room. She kept it hidden inside a small box next to her bed. Sometimes she held it in her hand at night and remembered his gentle voice, the warmth of his shoulder, the honesty in his words. It was the only physical reminder she had of him. Meanwhile, far away from her shining palace, Ethan lived a completely different life. After the attack and rescue, he spent several weeks thinking. Everyone on the station praised him for his bravery, but he didn't feel like a hero. He felt confused. The memory of sitting close to the Queen, talking to her as if she were simply another person, had left a deep mark on him. But he knew their lives were separated by entire worlds of expectation. She was a queen with responsibilities beyond imagining. He was just an engineer who fixed broken pipes and faulty circuits. He feared that staying near her might pull him into political conflict or unwanted attention. He didn't want to become a symbol or a tool used by powerful people. More than that, he feared she might look at him differently once the danger passed, maybe as someone beneath her. Someone not meant to be part of her life. So he made a difficult choice. He left before she could decide anything for him. Ethan tried to build a new life. Far from the center of galactic politics, he found work on a small mining moon at the edge of a quiet star system. The settlement was peaceful, filled with workers who simply wanted steady jobs and simple lives. Here, people didn't care about galactic councils or royal families. They cared about oxygen levels, machinery maintenance, whether the next supply ship would arrive on time. Ethan became one of them. He repaired engines, maintained mining equipment, and lived in a small metal room with a plain bed and a single window that showed the endless stars. At first, he enjoyed the silence. No pressure, no expectations, no royal responsibilities. But as months turned into years, he realized something. Silence could also feel lonely. Some nights, after long shifts, he lay awake thinking about the Queen. He remembered her calm voice, her warm smile, the way she trusted him even in danger. He wondered what she was doing now. Was she safe? Was she happy? Did she ever think about him even for a moment? He kept a small holoscreen hidden in his drawer, where he saved news clips or images of her whenever they appeared. He never showed anyone. It was his private world, a quiet reminder of a moment he could never forget. But he also told himself the same thing repeatedly. Her world is not mine. Her path is different. I should not disturb her life. Meanwhile, in her palace, Aravel was facing new pressure from her council. As a queen, she was expected to choose a partner, someone who could help her manage the empire, someone with a strong background and noble lineage. Suitable candidates came from different star systems, bringing gifts and promises. But Aravel felt nothing toward them. They spoke politely, respectfully, but there was no spark, no honesty, no warmth. Her advisors insisted that a queen should not remain alone. The empire needs stability, they said. A strong partnership is necessary for the future. Aravel understood that logically, but emotionally, she felt a barrier. Her heart refused to accept any of the candidates. She knew why. Even though she tried to ignore it, the truth remained. A human engineer she met only once had left a lasting impression. One evening, after a long meeting, she stood alone in her private chamber and looked out the crystal window at the glowing city below. She felt an ache in her chest, a quiet longing she could no longer push away. She opened her small keepsake box, took out the silver key tag, and held it between her fingers. She wondered where he was. Was he safe? Did he still remember her voice, her face, their shared moment in the darkness of that damaged room? Part of her felt angry that he had vanished so suddenly, without letting her thank him properly. Angry that he had made a decision on her behalf. Angry that he had carried the burden alone when she would have protected him if he only stayed. But behind the anger was something softer. Sadness. And a quiet hope that someday she might see him again. The more she tried to move forward, the more her memories held her back. She found herself searching news channels, scanning travel logs, and asking trusted aides to discreetly check the station archives again. Every lead ended in silence. Ethan Hale had disappeared completely, but Aravel was not a ruler who accepted unanswered questions easily, especially not questions that touched her heart. She had spent 5 years hiding her search behind official work, but she knew she could not continue like this forever. If she truly wanted closure, if she truly wanted to understand why he left, She needed to take action herself. A quiet decision formed in her mind, toward one she had never dared to consider before. She would find him. Not as a queen sending orders, but as a person following her own truth. She knew it would be difficult. The galaxy was large, and humans traveled frequently. But the thought of never knowing the truth bothered her more than any challenge ahead. Meanwhile, Ethan had no idea that somewhere across the galaxy, a queen still remembered his name. He woke up early each morning, went to work, fixed machines, and returned home to the same quiet room. But deep inside, part of him knew he was living only half a life. Something was missing. Or rather, someone. Both continued their separate paths, unaware that destiny was quietly preparing to bring them together again. Neither knew how close they were to a journey that would change their lives forever. But the galaxy has a way of crossing paths that were never meant to stay apart. And soon, very soon, their worlds would collide, again unexpectedly, powerfully, and beautifully. Tilda. For 5 long years, Queen Aravel had lived between her duties and her unanswered questions. She had guided her empire with strength, settled conflicts between star systems, led peace missions, and stood proudly as the symbol of unity for billions. But every quiet moment reminded her of something she tried to ignore, the feeling that a part of her life had been left unfinished. A part connected to a human engineer named Ethan Hale. She had searched for him in secret through official records. But Ethan had vanished from every system where his name once appeared. No forwarding information, no trail, nothing that could tell her where he had gone or why he had disappeared so suddenly. At first she thought he might have moved to another station, but even that left no trace. It was like he had erased himself from the galaxy. Her council had grown more restless in the meantime. They pressured her more and more each year to choose a political partner. They offered candidates from noble families, skilled leaders, and famous diplomats. Aravel listened politely and rejected them all. She kept telling them she needed more time. But the council insisted the empire required a strong alliance. You cannot rule alone forever, one advisor warned gently. We must show the people stability, another added. Aravel understood their point. But she also knew she could not give her heart to someone just because the council wanted it. None of the candidates understood her the way Ethan did in that short, dangerous night. None of them spoke to her with honesty. None of them saw her as a person instead of a throne. Finally, after 5 years of pretending she had moved on, Aravel made a private choice. She could no longer wonder. She could no longer keep that night locked inside her memory while the rest of her life marched forward. She needed closure, whether that meant seeing Ethan again or hearing the truth from him. She decided she would find him, but she could not simply order her palace guards or her intelligence team to locate a human engineer. That would cause questions, rumors, and possibly political trouble. Some factions in the empire already disliked the idea of their queen having any connection to a human. Aravel needed to move carefully, so she approached the one person she trusted, completely General Sorrel, the commander of her royal guard. He had served her since her youth and understood her better than anyone in the palace. I wish to find someone, Aravel told him one night after an exhausting council meeting. A person from Earth. A man named Ethan Hale. Sorrel did not look surprised. He had been with her the day she was rescued. He remembered the engineer who had protected her at great risk. He had noticed the missing expression in her eyes afterward. You have been searching for him quietly for years, he said softly. I always wondered when you would ask for my help. Aravel lowered her gaze. I am not doing this as a queen, she whispered. I need to understand why he left. I need closure. Sorrel bowed respectfully. Then I will help you find him. But you must know, searching for a single human across the galaxy will not be easy. I do not need easy, Aravel replied. I need answers. With the general's help, she accessed old logs that had not been checked in years. Records from the station where the attack had happened. Medical transfer logs. Personnel departures, anything connected to Ethan Hale. Most of the files were dull and full of routine information. But after weeks of careful searching, Sorrel found something unusual. Ethan's departure report contained incorrect location tags. Someone had altered the record. It seems he didn't want anyone to find him, Sorrel said. Aravel stared at the screen, her chest tightening. Or he wanted to protect me from something, she murmured. The false location tags led nowhere. But the original fragments, the parts the system could not fully erase, showed hints of a travel route. It was not detailed, but it pointed toward a series of small systems on the outer edges of the galaxy, places where people often went to disappear. Aravel looked at the stars glowing on the map. Her heart beat faster. There, she whispered. That is where he went.
How?
General Sorrel stepped closer. If you truly wish to find him, you cannot take the royal fleet. You cannot leave with an official escort. Your disappearance would create panic. Aravel nodded slowly. Then I will leave in secret. Sorrel tried to protest at first. A queen traveling alone was dangerous. But Aravel had already made up her mind. She had spent her entire life following rules and expectations. This journey was hers alone. They prepared a small, unmarked ship safe, fast, and hidden from most tracking systems. Only 3 people knew about her departure: Aravel, Sorrel, and her most trusted pilot, Captain Lyra, a skilled and loyal officer who agreed to fly her without hesitation before leaving. Aravel stood on the balcony of her palace one last time. The city below sparkled with lights, and the sky above shimmered with distant stars. She knew her absence would cause trouble. She knew the council would be furious. But she also knew she could not continue living with questions that never stopped echoing in her heart. I am not leaving the Empire, she whispered to herself. I am searching for a truth I deserve to know. The next morning, while the palace still slept, she boarded the small ship with Captain Lyra. They left the planet quietly, slipping into space with no announcements and no royal banners. Aravel felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She had not traveled without guards or ceremony since her youth. It felt strangely freeing. Their journey took them through several star systems. Aravel and Lyra visited stations, mining colonies, and remote settlements where humans often worked. Aravel kept her identity hidden by wearing a cloak and a simple face covering. Sometimes she spent hours talking to workers in dusty corridors, asking about an engineer named Ethan Hale. Most people had never heard of him. Some had seen humans who matched the description, but had no idea where they went. As days turned into weeks, Aravel began to feel frustrated. Had he moved again? Had she arrived too late? Was this journey pointless? But every time doubt tried to weaken her resolve, she touched the silver key tag she kept hidden in her pocket. She reminded herself that she needed answers, no matter how long it took. One evening, after a long day of unsuccessful searching, Captain Lyra returned to their ship with new information. Your Majesty, she said, then quickly corrected herself, remembering they were traveling incognito. Aravel. I found something. Aravel's heart raced. What is it? A supply worker at the last station recognized the name Ethan Hale. He said Ethan worked on a mining moon a few systems away, a place called R'Lan 5. Aravel felt her breath catch. R'Lan 5, she repeated. A mining moon. Lyra nodded. He didn't know whether Ethan is still there, but it is the first real lead we've found. Aravel's voice trembled slightly with a mix of hope and fear. Then we go there. At once they set course for R'Lan 5. The journey took several hours, but Aravel couldn't sleep. She spent the time quietly staring out at the stars, wondering what she would say if she actually found him. Would he be happy to see her? Would he feel burdened? Had he moved on? 1,000 questions filled her mind, but one stayed the strongest. Why did he disappear after that night? What did he truly feel? When the ship finally approached R'Lan 5, the window revealed a dusty gray moon dotted with metal buildings and mining shafts. It looked nothing like the shining cities of her empire. It was simple, rough, and lonely, but strangely peaceful. Aravel placed a hand over her chest as she breathed deeply. He might be there, she whispered. The ship landed quietly on the outer edge of the settlement, where workers moved between buildings in thick uniforms. Aravel stepped onto the ground, her heart pounding with every breath. After 5 years of silence, after countless moments spent wondering, after a journey across the galaxy, She was finally close, very close, and soon she would discover the truth she had been seeking for half a decade. Tilda. Aravel stepped onto the dusty ground of Relin 5 with a feeling she had not experienced in years, a blend of fear, excitement, and uncertainty. This mining moon was nothing like the glowing palaces or peaceful gardens of her homeworld. Here, everything looked worn and practical. Metal buildings stood in rows without decoration. The air smelled of iron and machinery. Workers in thick uniforms moved quickly between the shafts, carrying tools and equipment. No one here cared about royalty, politics, or grand speeches. Life here was simple and harsh. But this was exactly the kind of place where someone wanting to disappear might choose to live. Aravel pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, hiding her face. Captain Lyra walked beside her, scanning the busy area with cautious eyes. Their ship was parked quietly behind a storage building, attracting no attention. They needed to blend in. A group of workers passed by, talking loudly. Lyra turned to Aravel and whispered, "We should start by asking the foreman. Mining records are usually strict." Aravel nodded, but her heart was already racing. The idea of finally seeing Ethan again after 5 years made her palms sweat. What if he wasn't here? What if he had left recently? Or worse, what if he didn't want to see her at all? The thought hit her harder than she expected. They approached a tall worker with a heavy tool belt hanging from his waist. His beard was thick, and his uniform was covered with dust. Lyra spoke politely. "Excuse me, we're looking for someone named Ethan Hale. He's human, an engineer. Have you seen him around here?" The man wiped sweat from his forehead. "Ethan. Yeah, I know him. Quiet guy. Keeps to himself." Then he pointed toward a distant building. "He's working in Sector C today. Engine repairs." Aravel felt her breath catch in her throat. He was here. After 5 years, she was standing on the same ground as him. "Thank you," she said softly. The worker nodded and walked off. Lyra turned to Aravel, keeping her voice low. "Are you ready?" Aravel wasn't sure. Her hands trembled inside her cloak. She had faced political crises, hostile delegations, and galactic dangers without blinking. But this felt different. It felt personal. It felt vulnerable. Still, she nodded. "Yes, I need to see him." They walked toward Sector C, passing rows of machinery and stacks of metal crates. Every step made her heart beat faster. She imagined him working, fixing engines the way he always loved to do. She wondered whether he still smiled the same way, whether his voice still held that calm warmth she remembered. The building they entered was loud inside. Engines hummed, tools clattered, and bright sparks flashed from welding machines. Workers barely noticed the 2 figures walking in, and then Aravel saw him. Ethan stood with his back to her, working on a damaged power converter. His hair was slightly longer now, and he wore a simple gray uniform with gloves and safety goggles resting on his forehead. He looked older not by age, but by experience. His shoulders carried a quiet tiredness, as if the weight of the years had never fully left him. For a long moment, Aravel could not breathe. Memories washed over her, the cold, dark room 5 years ago, his steady voice, the warmth of his shoulder, the feeling of safety he gave her, even in danger. Lyra stepped back respectfully. Giving her space, Aravel slowly moved forward. Her voice trembled quietly. "Ethan." He froze instantly. The wrench in his hand slipped and clattered to the floor. Slowly, he turned around, and when his eyes met hers, his expression changed completely. His breath caught. His face showed shock, disbelief, fear, and something deeper, something he had buried long ago. "Queen," he whispered, but she raised a hand gently. "No titles," she said softly. "Not today." He stared at her for a long moment, unable to speak. He looked as if he were afraid she might vanish if he blinked. Finally, he whispered, "Aravel, is it really you?" She nodded, feeling her chest grow tight. "Yes, I've been searching for you." Ethan stepped back slightly, confusion covering his face. "Why? You shouldn't be here. You're supposed to be safe in your empire. Why would you come here for me?" His voice carried surprise and worry, as if he believed her presence put her in danger. Aravel took another slow step toward him. Because you disappeared without a word. Because you left before I could thank you. Because I needed to know why. Ethan looked away. He wiped his hands on a cloth, trying to steady himself. I didn't think you would remember me after that night. I thought it was safer if I left. Safer for who? Aravel asked quietly. For you, he answered. His voice was low, filled with a heavy truth. If I stayed, people would make stories. They would ask questions. They would try to use me. I didn't want to cause trouble for you. You're a queen. Your life is full of pressure. I didn't want to become part of it. Aravel felt a quiet ache in her chest. You made that choice for both of us, Ethan. You didn't even give me a chance to speak. Ethan swallowed hard. Because I was afraid, she stepped closer until they stood only a few feet apart. The noisy workshop around them faded into the background. Her voice became softer. Afraid of what? He looked into her eyes, those same violet eyes he had once seen so closely in the dark room. Afraid that what happened between us was only the result of fear and danger. He whispered, afraid that when the moment passed, you would forget me. Afraid that I would start wanting something I had no right to want. Aravel's heart pounded. And what is that? Ethan hesitated, struggling with the words. You, he finally said. I was afraid I would want you. The workshop noise seemed to stop completely for a moment. Aravel felt warmth rise to her face, but not from embarrassment. From something deeper, something she had waited years to hear. She stepped even closer. Ethan, I never forgot you. Not for a single day. He looked stunned. Aravel, I held on to the memory of that night, she said. Your honesty, your kindness, your courage. I kept something of yours. She reached into her cloak and revealed the silver key tag. You dropped this. I kept it because it reminded me of you. Ethan stared at it, his eyes softening with emotion. I thought I lost that. You didn't, she whispered. I kept it for 5 years. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands, overwhelmed. I don't understand. You're a queen. You have responsibilities. Why come all this way? Just to see me? Aravel lifted her eyes to his. Because I needed to know whether the connection we shared that night was real. And because I could not live the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Ethan looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. What if it's too late? He whispered. Aravel shook her head slowly. It isn't too late. Not if you still feel something? He exhaled shakily. How can you be so sure? She reached out and gently touched his hand. Because I found you, their eyes locked. Their hands stayed joined. And Ethan felt the weight of 5 years lift slowly from his shoulders, but the moment could not remain. Peaceful for long, a loud alarm sounded through the workshop. Workers began shouting and running outside. Lyra rushed back in, her expression tense. Aravel, she stopped herself, remembering the secrecy. Someone reported the presence of an unidentified ship. The settlement security is coming. Ethan's eyes widened. They can't find out who you are. If they do, this whole place will panic. Aravel turned toward the exit, her cloak swirling. Then we need to leave now. Ethan hesitated only for a second before grabbing his gear. I'm coming with you. Aravel looked at him, surprised. Are you sure? He nodded firmly. I ran once. I'm not running again. For the first time. Her heart felt light. Together after 5 years of distance, they ran toward their uncertain future. Side by side again. Ethan stood quietly in front of Aravel as the sun of the mining moon began to rise behind them. The light touched the ground with soft gold, and he felt as if the world itself was watching them. For 5 years he had tried to forget this woman, this queen from another world. This memory that stayed in his heart no matter how far he ran. Now she was standing in front of him again, her eyes calm but full of emotions he could not easily name. She had found him after all this time, and Ethan felt both fear and relief inside him. Aravel spoke gently, almost like she was afraid to break the silence between them. She told him she had never stopped thinking about him, that the moment he saved her life had changed something inside her. She explained that she had searched for him not because she wanted to command him, not because she needed him as a symbol, but because she wanted to understand the bond they had felt that night. She wanted an answer for the empty space he had left when he walked away without a word. Ethan listened carefully, his heart shaking. He had always believed that people like Aravel lived in a different world, a world of rules, power, duty, and expectations. He had no place there. He was just a simple engineer who fixed machines and tried to survive each day. He told her honestly that he left because he felt he was too small for her world. He was scared he would bring her trouble or become a weakness others could use against her. He felt it was better to disappear than to hold her back. Aravel looked at him with gentle strength, not anger. She stepped closer, and Ethan noticed the soft glow of her alien markings, shining faintly as they always did when she felt deep emotions. She told him he never understood how important his courage was to her. She said he was the first person who ever spoke to her honestly, without fear. She said she never wanted someone who bowed to her crown. She wanted someone who saw her as a living person, not a symbol. And that person had always been Ethan. But in the middle of their emotional moment, her expression became serious. She explained that her empire was facing trouble again. The political council, already unhappy with her delaying a royal marriage for years, had grown angry when she left the palace to search for him. They claimed she was irresponsible, and they wanted to take power from her. Some members even wanted to force her to step down if she did not return immediately and follow their orders. Ethan felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He had already disappeared once, and now his existence might cause her more problems. But Aravel did not blame him. She said she came because she needed clarity. It's because she needed to know whether she should face the Empire alone or with the man she trusted most. She did not want to push him into her world. She simply wanted to hear his heart. Ethan took a long breath. He had avoided big decisions for many years. He had avoided love, responsibility, and even his own dreams. But now he realized that running away had not solved anything. It had only left him feeling empty. He looked at Aravel, at her calm eyes, at her strength, mixed with quiet hope, and he realized he did not want to run anymore. He told her he wanted to stand by her not because he felt forced, but because he cared about her. He knew life with her would not be easy. It would be full of challenges, strange customs, political pressure, and unknown dangers. But he also knew he would rather face all of that than live another day, wondering what if. Aravel did not smile at first. Instead, her eyes softened in a way that made Ethan's chest tighten. She stepped closer and placed her hand over his. Her touch felt warm, steady, full of silent meaning. She said she would accept his presence in her life only if he chose it freely. And Ethan nodded slowly, this time with full certainty. Their journey back to her empire took several days. Ethan saw stars he had never seen before, planets filled with colors that felt almost unreal, and long shimmering paths of light guiding their ship. Aravel stayed beside him, explaining everything patiently. She wanted him to feel comfortable, not overwhelmed. Ethan realized that even though she was a queen, she had a gentle side that she rarely showed to others. When they finally reached the capital world, the sight was breathtaking. The city floated like a web of crystal across the sky, with towers glowing in soft blues and golds. Thousands of citizens watched the queen's ship return, and whispers spread across the streets as they saw a human walking beside her. Some were surprised, others confused, and many curious. Ethan felt nervous, but Aravel walked confidently, keeping him close. The council, however, was not pleased. They called an emergency meeting the moment she arrived. The grand hall was filled with tall figures from different worlds, each wearing formal robes and carrying symbols of their authority. They questioned her decision to leave on her own. They questioned the presence of Ethan. They questioned her loyalty to the Empire. Aravel answered calmly but firmly. She explained that a leader needed space to find clarity, not just follow orders like a machine. She said she did not run away, she sought truth. And she said Ethan was part of that truth. Her voice was steady, her posture strong, and her words carried the weight of a ruler who understood her throne better than those who tried to control her. But the council still resisted. Some claimed she was letting personal feelings guide her. Others accused Ethan of influencing her choices. They demanded proof that he was trustworthy. Ethan stood quietly at first, but then something inside him shifted. He realized that Aravel had risked everything to find him. Now it was his turn to protect her. He stepped forward respectfully and offered to work on a critical issue the Empire had been struggling with: an engineering flaw in the planet's energy shield system. He had seen hints of it in the data Aravel shared with him during their journey. He believed the Council was ignoring this danger because fixing it required admitting past mistakes. His words surprised the room. The Council could not easily refuse technical help, especially when the system he mentioned was vital to their world. They agreed, though reluctantly, to let him investigate. Over the next days, Ethan worked closely with Aravel's scientific teams. He discovered the flaw was deeper than expected, and someone inside the Council had tried to hide the reports. This information shook the political structure. The members who tried to suppress the truth were removed from their positions. The Empire recognized Ethan's honesty and skill. For the first time, Ethan felt he belonged somewhere, not because of his status, but because of his actions. When the crisis was resolved, Aravel held a public gathering in the central plaza of the capital. Citizens from many worlds came to hear her speak. Standing on the platform, under the bright light of 3 suns, she told her people that trust, courage, and kindness came in many forms. She said a true leader did not stand above others, but beside those who brought strength to the world. Then she turned toward Ethan. She did not give him a title or force any grand declaration. She simply extended her hand toward him, asking him to walk beside her. Ethan took her hand in front of the entire Empire. There was quiet at first, then a wave of warm approval spread through the crowd. Not because he was a hero, but because they saw the truth in their queen's choice. Ethan realized he had finally stopped running. Aravel realized she had finally found the person she had searched for, not just across the galaxy, but inside her own heart. And together, they walked forward into a future neither expected but both were ready to build.